Welcome back. Haven't spoken to you for a couple of days. It's Pastor Pete here on Tuesday morning after Easter. Trust that the Lord has kept you and has caused you to be particularly thankful and grown in your depth of appreciation for the friends and family and neighbors, even the solitude perhaps that you have had to enjoy, endure over this bit of an odd weekend, hasn't it? Good Friday and into Saturday and Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. It's been different, hasn't it? It was an odd weekend for us at Downsview. It's been an odd weekend for Christian churches across the GTA where we live. And one of the challenges, of course, in those kind of situations is always to key on the half emptiness of our glasses as opposed to the half fullness of them. And I would just want to encourage you that as we're coming through this and we're getting into the next season, don't miss opportunities to seek out evidences of grace and ask God, and it may even be confessing God, that I'm sorry that I'm not appreciative of the things that you are doing, as much as it seems to me to be a bit of a discouragement that the traditional Easter celebrations are not things that we've done, that things haven't gone the way that we anticipated, and those can be sad times. And that's legitimate to feel that loss and that yearning to have those kind of opportunities to be together in a way that we normally do. Understand, friends, just because it's something we normally do doesn't mean it's the right thing or the best thing. I'm not suggesting it's wrong to do that. I'm just saying, just be careful that we don't find ourselves in a situation that because we've always done it a certain way, anything other than or different or less than that is got to be wrong. Because before we know it, we're going to find ourselves complaining, or as Thomas Watson the Puritan said, murmuring against God because, I'm paraphrasing now, we believe we could run the world better than he could, which is essentially what our complaints mean. So just guard our hearts against that and look back on this past weekend and just think, what is it that we can give thanks for in a particular and unique way, and to recognize that God has not given you second best, but that God in his grace has still provided, and provided beautifully in the things that he's given us, even though they may be significantly different. One of the things I want to mention at the outset this morning is that you're going to see a little less on our emails over the next few weeks and a little more on the video probably. I'm just trying to make the best use of my time and the best use of your time. Do you have to reread things in the video or reread things on the email that you've seen or mentioned on the video? And it's probably just as easy for me just to mention a few of those kind of announcements. One of the things that I do want to ask you to be in prayer for, Emmy, Colleen, Andre in particular, have been looking into the opportunities for us to give to our church. And those details, Lord willing, will be out this week, that we are looking into an e-transfer system that those of you who do online banking, which is most of us nowadays, I think, are able to transfer money just from your account directly, the same way as if you were paying a bill. You'll be able to give to the church. You're always able, and some of you have already been doing it, and it's been an encouragement that you can drop off your checks to the church in the mailbox, or you can just mail them in. And we've received donations from both of those ways. Not a whole lot just yet. I will tell you that as I was on one of my Zoom calls with our fellow pastors in this past week or so, and they're talking about how all the money's still been coming in because they have had online giving, they have had PayPal and Canada Helps and all these other opportunities on their website for years, or people have had pre-authorized giving already in place for years. Folks said, well, how are things at Downsview? I said, well, we've had just about almost not a dime come in. And we're just trusting that God will move the people of God when we have the opportunity and the means to give, that we'll remember that we have to do that. You should see the eyes pop out, and the folks are like, how are you doing it? How are you keeping the lights on? Like, are you still getting paid? Are you still... Say, look, we have some reserves in place, and we're a small church on one level, but the overwhelming majority of our expenses have not changed. And so we are trusting that you will keep that in mind, that over the next number of weeks or months until we get back together, that you'll realize that those givings do need to come in order for us to fund the ministry here at Downsview. But details on how to do that, Lord willing, are coming this week. Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock, our Facebook Live, which is the same time frame as our weekly prayer meeting. Facebook Live will be going live again here from the church at 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock on Wednesday night. If you've not popped in, please do. A good majority of you have Facebook. Just pop on there at 7 o'clock. Just go to my Facebook page and you'll see a notification there, and you can just click on, you can just watch. And there's a side panel for you to interact with one another. And we've had a good deal of participation, more each week. I think we had over 80 people pop in, view at least. That Facebook Live last Wednesday. So that was an encouraging time. So that does give you some opportunity to do that. And we're looking at trying to expand possibly the interaction online that we can have as a church by scheduling a Zoom meeting, that we may try to do that weekly or maybe bi-weekly, or even we're doing that with the leadership as it is. And I have at least 3 Zoom calls a week with brother pastors and our FEB Association and our FEB Central staff people who are being really helpful for us to keep in contact as pastors. So just a couple of those things to keep in mind, if you would, in the coming week. The thought I have today from the Word of God is from the book of Judges, chapter 9. Joshua, book of Joshua, chapter 9. In our daily Bible reading today, the lesson was right there from Joshua chapter 9 and verse 14, that the men of Israel did not inquire of the Lord. They did not inquire of the Lord in a circumstance that caused them to be duped by one of the nations that they were to be taking over as they made their trek into the land of Canaan. You may remember the scene as Joshua takes the people of God into the land of Canaan. They overcome Jericho. They overcome the incident at the city of Ai. And now they come, and as they're continuing their trek into the promised land, some of the other nations that are there start to hear about this, and in their fear, try to think up, well, how are we going to do this? Sometimes they have a number of nations that come together, or people groups that come together, and they're going to form together a huge alliance to come again militarily against the nation of Israel. A group called the Gibeonites do something different. What they do is they decide to trick them. And they put on old clothes, old sandals, moldy bread, broken wineskins, and they have dust all over them, and they present themselves to Joshua and the nation of Israel. And Joshua says, "Where do you come from?" And they say, "Oh, we've come from a long way. So far away you wouldn't even have heard of it. A place called Thunder Bay. None of you would have heard of Thunder Bay." And Pam and I moved originally from here. There, a lot of folks are going, "Oh, Thunder Bay, I have no idea where that is." Well, that was the idea here. They don't even give them a name of a land, the Gibeonites, and they just say, "Look, we've come from a long way, and we heard about God that's on your side, and because of that, we have come and we'd like to, ally ourselves with you and connect with you, and in many ways submit to you." And it says that the people of God looked at them, judged what they were saying based on what they could see, what they could perceive, how they gave themselves to their own comprehension and understanding. And it says in chapter 9 and verse 14, they took some of their provisions, meaning they took some of the provisions the Gibeonites had, and they examined them essentially, but they did not ask counsel from the Lord. And the next verse is, Joshua made peace with them, made a covenant with them, to live with them, and the leaders of the congregations swore to them. So now they're stuck, because 3 days later it says they realized that they actually lived among them. They were the Gibeonites. They were close by. They didn't come from Thunder Bay. Right? They came from Milton. They came from Scarborough. They were right there. They're a little trek outside, but they were close by. And now Joshua has to keep his word. And he's promised these people that he won't kill them, that he won't destroy them like he's been destroying these other communities, these other places, subjecting these other people groups. And it says that Joshua eventually makes them servants, woodcutters, and water carriers, it says. But the people of Gideon seem to say, well, that's okay with us, because we just didn't want to get destroyed by you like places like Jericho and Ai had. And it's interesting to me that the key interpretive thought there seems to be they trusted their own understanding. They trusted their own perception rather than seeking the Lord, as in our case would be, through His Word. They would have inquired of the Lord differently, of course, in prayer. But God in His kindness has given you and I His Word. And you remember a number of months ago, we spoke about the authority of the Word of God, how the Word of God can't be something for us that merely influences or seasons our decisions. It must govern our decisions. And being governed by God means being governed by His will, and His will is revealed in His Word. And so there are rampant speculations and speculators out there nowadays telling you what God's up to and what God's doing and why this is. And when it's not governed by the Word of God, who cares? Understand, friends, that God has not given you second best this past Easter weekend. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's second best. God tells us in His Word again and again and again that I'm going to cause all of these things to work together for the good of you who love me, that I have called according to my purpose. That God promises to work for those who wait for Him. That God promises, even in the lament of Lamentations chapter 3, that it is good to wait silently for the salvation of the Lord. That there's aspects of trusting God that simply say, I'm going to see to it that when I'm trying to know how I should operate, particularly in the midst of unfamiliar times like this, that you got to cling to what you know. That you've got to go back to the source so that you can know. That you've got to continually go back to the things that you know God is saying, you know God has been promising. And that's why each of my emails I have been ending with confidence in the promises of God, Pastor Pete. With confidence in the promises of God. And the people of Israel should have had trust and confidence that they would seek God for His promises, and they didn't, and they were duped. Don't find yourself today tricked into believing that someone who's telling you who knows exactly what's going on without any reference to the Word of God. Don't do it. Don't get sucked into that. Find yourself daily prepared with the Word of God. You do that by ingesting it, taking it in, tasting and seeing that the Lord is good as you nourish yourself on His Word. Friends, would God show Himself faithful to you yet again today? Thanks for your attention again. Talk to you